Well, good morning. So we are finally out of Matthew 24. We're moving on in Matthew, and so today we're going to be in Matthew 25. And so we're going to start out, before we get into anything, we're just going to start out and read through this section. We're going to read through these two parables, and then we'll kind of get into it. So starting Matthew 25, verse 1, "At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the groom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they didn't take oil with them, but the wise ones took oil in their flasks with their lamps. When the groom was delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. In the middle of the night, there was a shout, 'Here's the groom, come out to meet him.' Then all the virgins got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish ones said to the wise ones, 'Give us some of your oil, because our lamps are going out.' The wise ones answered, 'No, there won't be enough for us and for you. Go instead to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves.' When they had gone to buy some, the groom arrived, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later the rest of the virgins also came and said, 'Master, Master, open up for us.' He replied, 'Truly I tell you, I don't know you. Therefore be alert, because you don't know either the day or the hour. For it is just like a man about to go on a journey. He called his own servants and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, depending on each one's ability. Then he went on a journey. Immediately the man who had received 5 talents went, put them to work, and earned 5 more. In the same way, the man with 2 earned 2 more, but the man who had received 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 talents approached, presented 5 more talents, and said, 'Master, you gave me 5 talents. See, I've earned 5 more.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy.' The man with 2 talents also approached. He said, 'Master, you gave me 2 talents. See, I've earned 2 more.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy.' The man who had received 1 talent also approached and said, 'Master, I know you. You're a harsh man, reaping where you haven't sown and gathering where you haven't scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went off and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours.' His master replied to him, 'You evil, lazy servant. If you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't scattered, then you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and I would have received my money back with interest when I returned. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given. He will have more than enough. But for the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. And throw this good-for-nothing servant into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.'" All right, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for the opportunity to spend time in your word. I thank you for our ability to gather together. And I just pray that you would speak through me and that you would speak the words that you desire to be heard. I pray that you'll open our hearts to hear the message that you have for us in your word. And I thank you again for this time. Amen. All right. Anybody here been hiking? We live in a place where that's possible. Been hiking at least once. You don't have to be a hiker, but you've been hiking. All right. Corey, we have somebody here who takes a group. Corey takes a group to Rocky Mountain National Park at least once, sometimes twice every year. Anybody been on that trip? Show of hands. Yeah, there's quite a few of you who've been on that trip. So if you've been hiking in the Rockies, you know that it's a little different than hiking at Turkey Run. Turkey Run is really nice. It's a great place to hike. One of the more beautiful places to hike in our state. But it's not the same as the Rockies. There are some challenges that are slightly different, right? If you go hike in the Rockies thinking that you're going to Turkey Run, you're going to be in for a surprise. Hiking at elevation is different. And there's preparation that needs to be done there, right? You need to go through this process of readying your body for the differences because it's harder to breathe. If you're going to do it for a week, it's hard on recovery. If you show up in soft tennis shoes, it's going to be hard on your feet because the rocks are sharp and you're going to have sore feet and blisters and all of these other things that come along with doing something that is out of your ordinary. So, I want you to envision, and you're going to have to do some work here because some of you are going to be out as soon as I give you the first concept of this. I want you to envision that Corey has invited you on this trip, and you've agreed to go. Now, for many of you, you've already thought, well, I'm already out on this story. I would not have agreed to go. That doesn't sound like me at all. But you've already agreed to go in this imaginary scenario that we've concocted here. And he tells you, be ready. It's going to be a tough week of hiking. We're not taking a light week. This is not going to be an easy week. We're going to hike a lot, and we're going to hike some hard hikes. So show up ready to go. But there's a caveat here, and that caveat is Corey's not going to tell you when you're actually going. He just tells you to be ready. Anybody still going on this trip? Have you all found something to cross off all of your scheduling conflicts that would make this impossible? That doesn't exist in this imaginary scenario. This is an uncomfortable situation to find yourself in. You would like more information. Many of us, just anxiety alone, that would not be acceptable, to just have to pack up and walk out the door. But you could respond to this in a few different ways, right? If you knew you were going on this trip, if this is the scenario and Corey is not telling you the date, and Corey didn't give me, I didn't tell him I was going to be using him as an example here, so sorry, Corey. But you could respond to this in a few different ways, right? There's this mysterious looming date, and you could do A, you could begin to intensely study all of your communications with Corey in the hopes that he is going to give you clues about when this date actually is. You could analyze, you know what, the last text message that he had, every third word started with the letter A. I'm thinking April or August. Seems like those might be the dates. I'm going to continue to monitor and check back. You could start analyzing his clothing. Hey, you know what, Corey's been wearing a lot of fall clothes whenever I see him. I think maybe it might be August. We could narrow it down. I've noticed that he's been only wearing fall clothes around me. But then what about that one day that he shows up wearing blue? And it's like, oh man, now I just don't know. So we could go down this wormhole where suddenly you have a bulletin board in your bedroom with thumbtacks and strings going all over the place, and you're trying to concoct, what is the time? When am I leaving on this trip so that I can be ready? And in the midst of all of that, you forget one really important thing, and what is that thing? To get ready, yeah. It'd be really good to know the date. It'd be a whole lot better to actually be ready when that date comes, right? And so that's option A. Not a great option. It leaves a pretty significant part of that plan out of the loop there. You could do the second way, and that is you could kind of do nothing and just go, you know, Corey wanted me on this trip. He wouldn't have invited me if he didn't think I could handle it. Never mind that he gave me some specific instructions about preparing. He likes me. He wouldn't do something to me to make me miserable. He wants me to come along on this trip, so it's probably fine. I don't really need to worry about getting hiking boots. My tennis shoes are pretty good. Maybe I'll show up in sandals and shorts. It's probably okay. That's probably not a great move either, right? That puts a lot of burden on other people. You show up on the day and you have no things packed and you have no shoes broken in and you're not ready and you haven't walked further than your couch to the refrigerator. There are going to be some problems, right? That's going to be a difficult transition into this. Corey's not going to be pleased with you because he's going to be carrying you half of the trail and then he's going to leave you and let a bear eat you. Or you could do the third thing, and that is you could actually get ready. You could go out and buy the equipment that you need. Get some good hiking shoes that you're going to break in. You could go hit the trails. You could be walking more. You could be, find the things that you know you're going to need. Sometimes you need shoes that work in ice because you might be walking through areas where there's snow and ice. So you might need spikes to put on your shoes. That's stuff you probably don't, maybe you have it, but if you're not a hiker, you don't have that stuff just sitting around. So maybe you prepare. This is the kind of challenge that Jesus is laying out for his disciples. They've asked some really important, good questions. They're thinking about the end, right? They're thinking about Jesus' return, and that's important to them because they're wanting to understand some of these things, but they're not understanding quite what Jesus is driving at. He wants them to be ready, not to just anticipate his return. There's some active part of this that's going to be put on them. There's some things they have to do in this interim time, and Jesus is trying to underscore that through this whole discussion that he has with them. And so that's how we get into this parable. Jesus is trying to emphasize to his disciples that God is most pleased by a permanent posture of readiness, one achieved through obedience and trust in him and in his timing. Not just an awareness that he has asks of us, but an actual pursuit of those things, right? So, Our job is to stay ready. In Matthew, jumping back to the beginning here, at that time the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the groom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they didn't take oil with them, but the wise ones took oil in their flasks with their lamps. When the groom was delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. I think this is really interesting because it would be really easy for your takeaway when you read this, and maybe it's been your takeaway when you've read this, is to read this parable and think it's about being alert. Because it does say that at the end of it. It says be alert, right? It says because we don't know the day or the time. Is anybody in this story alert? They all fall asleep. There's a delay and they all fall asleep. So it seems pretty hard to think that alertness is the only goal here. What's the difference between the 5 that fall asleep and have oil and the 5 that fall asleep and don't? Well, they're prepared. When it's time to go, they have what they need. So it isn't just a story about vigilance, but also a story about preparedness. The groom didn't arrive at the expected time. We don't really understand exactly what this ritual is. I mean, we don't totally understand what weddings were like, what that process was like. We understand that it's this place of honor. We understand that it's a significant thing to be invited and to be included. But we don't really understand what their part of this process is, right? They're bringing these torches in. Just for a frame of reference, this is not a lamp like you or I think of a lamp. It's probably more like a torch. Probably a bundle of materials that's dipped in oil, and it's burning because of that. And so if you don't have that oil, it just kind of goes out. You know, it's not intended to continue to burn without some source of fuel. So they show up without preparedness. They're waiting, and these 5 girls that don't have the stuff they need, they show up and they're not really ready for anything to go outside of the expected plan. If anything goes off the rails, they don't have a solution. They don't have a backup. They're not ready. So, in the middle of the night, there's a shout, here's the groom, come to meet him. Then all the virgins got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish ones said to the wise ones, give us some of your oil because our lamps are going out. The wise ones answered, no, there won't be enough for us and for you. Go instead to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves. This can seem a little callous, right? If you're thinking of a lamp like an oil lamp, which is, I think, your oil and lamp are included in here, you'd be forgiven for not thinking in terms of filling a lamp with a little bit of oil. What difference would it make for them to have shared that? Well, that's not the point either. The point here in this is preparedness can't be done for someone else. Going back to our Corey analogy, if you ask Corey to hike on your behalf to prep your legs, it's not going to work, right? You can't get prepared by someone else. You have to do the work. Obedience is that way. Obedience to God can't be done for you. Your grandma, your parents, your friends, your spouse can't obey God on your behalf. Your faith is your own, and you are responsible to be ready. That's your challenge. You can't borrow someone else's readiness. You just have to be ready. And readiness is not this passive thing. It is not. Now, many of you think, I don't know if, we've had a lot of storms lately. Anybody have like a bag that you have ready to go if there is a storm and you need to go wherever it is that you have to go in the event of a significant storm? I had one of those. My 6th grade teacher terrified us of the weather, and I loved 6th grade science. I was all the way in on that, but I may have developed deep trauma about storms as a result of her efficient teaching. And I had a backpack ready to go with all of the things a 6th grader thinks that you need in the event of a significant storm by my door, ready to go. And I grabbed that thing if there was a slightly overcast day. But that's a different kind of being ready, right, than what Jesus is talking about. We have things that we need to do to be ready, but that's different from being completely prepared and ready. And so I was thinking about this, and I apologize for this example. I will explain it. It will miss some of you. But as I was studying for this and thinking about this idea of just this constant readiness, I was thinking about a scene from The Avengers. So again, if you don't know that movie, I do apologize. Let me set the scene for you. New York City is under attack. Everything's going badly. And in the midst of this fighting and this just enemies everywhere, streets are torn apart, and it looks rough. Here comes Bruce Banner on a moped. And he doesn't look like much, and he certainly doesn't look like the cavalry has arrived. He's a guy on and he's not even on a motorcycle, it's a moped, and it's not a good one. Enemies are bearing down on them. All of this bad stuff is happening, and he just starts to stroll down the street toward this gigantic flying creature. And they're all kind of like, hey, it would be a really good time to get angry. And he just kind of turns and drops the one-liner, that's the thing, I'm always angry. And he turns, and he's the Hulk. And so there's this, again, bad analogy, I understand, but there's this readiness, there's this ready to uncoil is this powerful part of him that is right there to be called upon at need. That's what it means to be ready. There's not a waiting period, there's a reaction to it's time, and now I'm going. The goal with this whole parable isn't to be watching for the groom, it's to be ready for the groom. Right? The watching part is an expectation of readiness, but it's a really minor part of it. Knowing that the groom is there is important. But if we haven't done the legwork to be actually ready for the groom, what difference does it make if we know he's here? He continues with another parable, and it's still on that theme of obedience and preparation, but it's taking a different angle, dealing with faithfulness. And so we get into the parable of the talents, and undoubtedly you've heard this many times. But in 14 it says, "For it is just like a man about to go on a journey. He called his own servants and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, depending on each one's ability. Then he went on a journey. Immediately the man who had received 5 talents went, put them to work, and earned 5 more. In the same way, the man with 2 earned 2 more. But the man who had received 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money." So it would be really easy to get a little distracted. This is one of those things where translation can be confusing because you hear the word talent and you think immediately about the way we use the word talent, gifts, things that we're good at. And while that is a reasonably good application of what is being talked about here, the way that it would have been understood by the people hearing it is it's a lot of money. That's what it is. It's a large sum of money. They're not talking about gifts in that same way, even though application-wise we can use it in that same way and understand it a lot that way. They're talking about a big amount of money, and they're being essentially given an amount that's in their care to invest and deal with and take care of. So they're given responsibility based on, it says, their capability, right? They're not asked to do something that's outside of their ability to deal with. You get 1-5, right? He's obviously maybe had some more success at being faithful and doing things with the master's money, and accordingly, they're all given different amounts. But the expectation is not that there will be different response to those different amounts, right? They're all given responsibility. Anybody with kids, you've probably given different responsibility to your kids based on their age level. You don't give them all equal things. If they're, big age gaps, you expect them to be obedient in their action, but you don't expect equal response because they have different levels of responsibility and you give them different levels of challenges there. So, they immediately get to work, right? These first 2, they take the money that they're given and they immediately put it to work. They recognize what's being put on them and they set out trying to do what they are supposed to do with that money. The third, and unfortunately this is one of those situations again where I think it's really easy for us to go, this is clearly the buffoon of the group, what a goober, and also if you really are honest about it, the one we should most identify with. Unfortunately, this is the case with most of these parables where I feel like I spend most of the time criticizing the person before realizing, oh no, I'm that dummy. Same situation here. He is ultimately misunderstanding who his master is and what his master wants from him. He hides his money in the ground, which again seems like a nonsensical thing. We think of this and it seems a little crazy, but realistically, it's not out of the question, right? He just wants to keep this money safe. He wants to be able to give back what he has received. It's understandable, but unfortunately, he doesn't recognize that return of that specific investment isn't what his master is seeking. He makes his own safety and his own security into an idol because he's more concerned with being able to not get in trouble with the master than he is being able to please the master. If that one hits a little close to home, it should. We shouldn't be seeking more to please, or we shouldn't be seeking more to avoid punishment from God than to please him. But we often do that. After a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. I think that's important to note. After a long time. Same thing here. Thematically, we're talking about a significant period of time that has passed, longer than the expected time, as with the groom, not happening in the timeline we expect, but happening in God's timeline. And so this is important. This is another theme Jesus is trying to drive this home to the disciples. And it says, the man who had received 5 talents approached, presented 5 more talents, and said, Master, you gave me 5 talents. See, I've earned 5 more. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You are faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy. The man with 2 talents also approached. He said, Master, you gave me 2 talents. See, I've earned 2 more talents. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy. Okay, so if you're looking at this in the way that we sometimes do, and the way the disciples absolutely were looking at this, they're looking at a relief from responsibility in some ways, right? When are you going to be back, Jesus, so that we can hand the reins back to you because you've given us this job, and we want to know when we can punch out. When is it back on you again? The master's response to these first 2 indicates that this idea of obedience and readiness is not a passive one. They didn't get ready. They lived as their master wished, and as a result were given greater responsibility. Their lives reflected a state of readiness. They were ready all the time. They were doing the things that God wanted them to do. Their master was being pleased in their actions, and so they get more responsibility. Maybe that's not your idea of a good payout, right? I worked hard. I'm supposed to be done now. Have you ever felt that way? I think that's pretty normal, but that's unfortunately not the call that we have. We're to work. And if we prove worthy, God is going to say, you know what? You did so well with this, I'm going to bless you with more responsibility. It's just what everybody wants, right? Please give me more responsibility. The man who received 1 talent also approached and said, Master, I know you. You're a harsh man, reaping where you haven't sown and gathering where you haven't scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went off and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. His master replied to him, you evil, lazy servant, if you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't scattered, then you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and I would have received my money back with interest when I returned. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has more will be given, and he will have more than enough. But to the one who does not have even what he has will be taken away from him. And throw this good-for-nothing servant into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The servant misunderstood his master. He acted out of fear, out of a desire to avoid pain and difficulty. And he simply hoped to hold on to what he had and run out the clock. So what? What do we do with this? Jesus needed the disciples to understand what they were getting into, because we know we're coming to the end of Jesus' time on earth. He is giving them this immense responsibility, to build his church. That's not a passive thing. You don't build the church passively. It does not happen. It's not going to happen on accident. This was critical to their mission, and it was important that they understand it would not be passive, but active and difficult, and with real risks and danger. It wasn't just this easy assignment they were being given. And it wasn't going to happen in their timeline and on their schedule. And he emphasized in both of these passages, in verse 5, when the groom was delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. And in verse 19, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled the accounts with them. It's going to be a while. There's going to be a wait. It's not going to happen in the timeline you expect. They're seeking an end and a rescue, right? That's what they want from Jesus. They want a relief from responsibility. They want the time they've been waiting so impatiently. Maybe before Jesus was there, patiently, and then less so when he arrives and they think the moment is there. They've been waiting on this Messiah. They've been waiting on relief, and they've been waiting on this world that they've been living in to be renewed, right? They want to see that come to fruition, and I think that is very relatable. We all can understand that. But Jesus was emphasizing that their role would not be to watch and wait, but to get busy working. That what it looked like to prepare for his return was going to be a lot of hard work and a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of pain. For our part, I think it's very natural to long for Jesus' return. I don't know if you, like me, read stories, news, different things. I mean, I know there are just sometimes I just read things and I just think, man, I just can't wait till Jesus is going to be back, because I'm so tired of some of the brokenness of the world, some of the just heartbreaking things that we see on a daily basis, things that anger us, things that just make us sad. It's the most normal, natural thing in the world for us to long for that to be done, for justice and rightness to be restored to the earth. And I think it's important that that still be a part of us, right? That we long for that we wake up some morning and say, Jesus, please come back, because I am ready for this to be over, and I'm ready for your kingdom here to begin. But the thing we can't forget is that when we wish for that return, judgment comes with it. Jesus doesn't come back without judgment. So what we're really hoping for when we hope for that is this selfish thing where we say, I'm ready for this to be done because it's hard for me. And I don't want to think or care so much about all the people who aren't ready for this return. We don't know when Jesus is going to return. But what we do know is that we've been given a mission, a specific one. And sometimes we find ourselves like our imaginary version of us that's going on a hiking trip with Corey, finding other things to occupy our time than preparing. Church, are we living in a way that we will hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant, when that day comes? Our church is tremendously blessed. We have a building that we can meet in. That's not true everywhere in the world. We have an overabundance of funds that we can use to pay for the things that we need. That's not true for places in this country. We have people with all kinds of skills and ability and diverse backgrounds and understanding and things that we're good at inside this congregation. That is an immense blessing, that we can take a group of people who have so many skills and abilities and go do important things because we have them here. God has uniquely blessed us with so much. But with those blessings comes an incredible responsibility. Have we put all of those gifts in pursuit of our mission, or are we burying them in the ground, afraid to act? We live in a lost community. We talk about 11212 often. If we've talked about it and you didn't know what we were talking about, 11,212 people is approximately, I don't know when that number was calculated, but it's approximately the number of unchurched people in our county. So when we talk about that, that's the number we're talking about. And that number should be something that makes you sick to your stomach. The number of people who, if Jesus were to return today, would face judgment. You good with that? Is that okay with you? Do you go home and just say, not my problem? Are you comfortable to go on with your normal life surrounded by dead men walking and just think, at least I got out? Or does it break your heart for the people of Park County who don't know that Jesus sacrificed everything to be with them? And if it doesn't break your heart, have you stopped to think and pray about why? About what block there is in there that is causing some hatred for some of those lost people? Because that's all that is. If it doesn't break your heart to think about those people, then you hate those people. Because that's the only way that happens. There can't just be lost people who are out there dead for all intents and purposes, and you don't care, and you call that anything other than hate. We live in a lost community. What would God have to say about our efforts to help them be found? Would we be able to say, honestly, we've put in the work. We took the risks. We did what we could. We put everything on the line in pursuit of those people. Or are we going to be the ones who say, well, God, I knew that you'd want back what was yours, and I was too afraid to act. What will we put on the line for the people in this county, for the people who touch our lives every day, that they might be found? Would you pray with me? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the blessings that you give us. You have richly poured them out over this church, and we are so thankful. We know that with those gifts come a tremendous amount of responsibility, and God, I just pray that you help us rise to the occasion, that in the midst of that fear, in the midst of uncertainty and just not quite knowing what way to go, that you would give us the wisdom and strength to follow you. That our desire would be to see your kingdom expanded here, to see the people of Park County come to know you, that in our power, it truly would be hard to go to hell from Park County. We thank you that you love us, that in spite of our mess, in spite of our problems, in spite of all the things that are obstacles to us, that you came for us, that you humbled yourself, that you lowered yourself, and that you died and rose from the grave so that we could be saved, so that we could be reunited with you, so that we could be made right. We love you, and I pray that we love you enough to be bold in our action, that those small obstacles that we let block us from sharing the good news with those around us, that we would be able to push those aside, that you would bulldoze through those for us and give us the strength and the boldness to share that good news with those around us, that they might be saved. I thank you for this time together, and I thank you for the gift of your Son. I pray all these things in your name. Amen.